Hi there, welcome back to your virtual studio and welcome to your prenatal and postnatal restorative practice. In this session, we are mostly resting. We are practicing just different ways of resting. We'll do a little bit of movement for the body, but mostly a ton of resting. And we're particularly going to use props in a way that supports your body during your rest, but it's going to hold your body in a particular position so that you can gently experience some stretching, but in a way that you're creating zero effort. Your body is relaxed. You're just placed and supported in a particular shape using props. Today, I'm using a bolster, 2 yoga blocks, and I'm also going to use a blanket. I have a blanket folded behind me. And now these are props that you will typically see in a yoga studio, and you may not have these props at home, but I highly encourage you to find as many pillows as possible. If you don't have a bolster like this, maybe about 4 large pillows, like big pillows from your bed, or if you have some big couch, comfortable couch cushions that you can use. And I know it might feel icky to think of putting your pillows on the floor, but just change the cover, some temporary covers while you do this, and I promise that the work you put into setting up your props, your pillows, doing a little trial and error at first, so adjusting, seeing if it works with your body, adding things to it. That's kind of all part of the restorative yoga asana practice. There is this effort, there is this work that we put into it. We have to physically set up our props, we move them, but then we rest, right? Then those props support us, and all of that work pays off. Now think about how else we can use that lesson. Hard work that really pays off. All right, so we're gonna really spend some time resting. If baby is inside, you're spending time with a baby as well. And if you are postnatal, enjoy. Maybe baby's nearby or somewhere else, and that's all right. Enjoy this moment for yourself as well. The other thing that I will say is that I'm also specifically using these props because if you do go to a yoga studio in person that has these props, and say it's not a prenatal class, other people want to go into Shavasana, you are no longer comfortable in Shavasana, so you already know, I'm going to grab these props and I'm going to do that pose that I practice in that restorative class at Soul Mind Moves, right, online. And so all of these poses are poses that you can choose as a substitute for traditional back-lying Shavasana. All right, so you can practice this at home, but also take it to replace any Shavasana, even through other prenatal classes that we might do here in our virtual studio. So use any of these as your substitute. All right, let's get ready. Take your time to set yourself up, and then meet me on the mat. All right, friends, you might have noticed that I have already the props set up in one particular position or in a particular setup, and we are going to change this setup a couple of times during the practice, but this will be the first setup. So I'm going to deconstruct it. I have my bolster, you might have your pillows, and I have 2 blocks. You might also have pillows here. You can stack a couple of pillows this way, and then stack 2 or 3 other pillows sort of slanted, a little tall and slanted. So you can do that. If you are using blocks, you're going to take 1 tall, 1 medium, and just create this little anchor for the bolster to lean and rest and be supported by the blocks. All right, I give it a little tap to make sure that the blocks don't collapse. So, all right, That's going to be our first setup, but we're not going to use it yet. We are going to begin in an upright seat. The next prop that I will ask you to grab is your blanket, or if you have a soft pillow that you can sit on just to bring a little support to your pelvis. Our first position is a simple seat. I have my blanket set up near my wall because if you do have some empty wall space, I'm going to invite you to sit back against the wall first. So you might move away from your mat or you can stay. You don't have to go to the wall, but it is a good, a nice support. And you might even just use a chair. You might have your back against a chair. Or again, anywhere you want it to be. You can set up on your mat. This is just an option to give you a little extra support in sitting up tall. So take your time to arrive. Just start to observe your breath. You don't have to control it. Give yourself permission to arrive by simply becoming an observer. Notice the length of your trunk and spine. And maybe you are already feeling nice and tall through the trunk and the spine. You might readjust, maybe tuck the chin a bit more to create more length through the back of the neck. If you're seated back against a chair or a wall, you probably don't have to make a lot of adjustments. The wall or the chair are already supporting that upright position, but still be mindful of it. And if baby is inside, perhaps I'll invite you to place your hands around baby's home. Maybe one hand over belly and one hand over your heart or chest. Spend a moment here breathing to yourself and or to your baby, perhaps to both of you. Notice this precious exchange. And slowly bring your hands back over to the knees. Slowly next, tuck the chin. And while the chin is tucked, you might allow the light back in, flutter the eyes open. Start to move the neck side to side, maybe into a couple of circles. You might have to move a little further away from the wall to do this. And then find a little stillness. Good. On the next breath, let the arms lift up. And we might exhale to lower. And it's okay if you switch the breath out here. We're just moving and flying. Enjoy the flow. Last one here. As you start to lower the arms, let's drop the left arm and reach the right arm up, finding a little side bend. Opposite side. And come back to center, shrug the shoulders a couple of times. then let's bring some little movement to the legs here. So we can lengthen them just as you are, maybe flex the feet, point the feet. So we're in a staff pose variation or Dandasana. Good, and then a couple of circles. You might have to move the feet a little wider so your toes and ankles don't collide. Good, we're gonna get ready to move to the mat and into our first restorative position here. So take your time. If there's any other little leg movement, do what you need. You might have to stand up and walk back to your mat. That's fine. I'll meet you there. All right, my friends, the first restorative shape that we're going to practice, or the first restorative asana, is Supta Baddha Konasana. And are you ready for the next part? You're going to simply bring your lower back as close to your pillows and your bolster as possible. And then relax. And here's the first test, right? If you lie back and hopefully your structure does not collapse, but if you feel like, oh, my head doesn't feel very well supported, you might add another pillow. I'm going to add a blanket like this over the top of my bolster, and I'm just gonna fold it, I'm gonna tuck it in, and it creates a little bit of a head, an extra head pillow there. Yeah, and we get to make as many adjustments as we need. Here, the legs can be lengthened. If you have other blocks or pillows, you can bend the knees, place the feet together in the Baddha Konasana. This is the bound angle shape with the feet together, knees pointing out. But it doesn't have to be this leg position. You can have your legs straightened. All you have to do now is connect to your breath. And that just means to watch it. And notice how it moves around baby's home, whether it's baby's home of present or past, or even future again. Hands may always rest wherever they need. If they want to hug or caress belly or baby's home, you can invite this to be simply a sweet exchange of mindfulness between baby and you. Or simply between body and you as a whole. Invite a deep breath in. Bring the attention back to the body. Inviting movement perhaps through fingers and toes, maybe a few wiggles. And if the knees are bent, You might take a moment to lengthen them. If they were lengthened, they might bend and start to find a little bit of movement. And we'll slowly turn towards one side, either left or right. I'm turning towards my right just because the camera is in that position or in that direction. And then we can peel off into a little seat. We're going to adjust into the next position. And the next position is Upavishta Konasana, which is wide-angled, seated forward fold. And so we can do it just like this. For some people, depending on if your first trimester, you might still have the space to simply scooch up to your bolster. If you're postnatal or early first trimester, this might still be a great place. Leave your props as is. Arms can just wrap around the bolster. And you can set your forehead or turn your head and rest in this supported shape. Now, obviously, second and third trimester, and as soon as baby starts growing and the bump gets a little bigger, we're going to need more space. So we're going to just turn your structure around so we can either disassemble it, or depending on what you have, you can just spin it around. So here I'm doing the opposite setup. Still a tall block, still a medium block there. Bolster is being supported, but it is facing me now. It's going to be facing you. And you can still have an extra pillow or an extra rolled blanket on top for even more support. And then you can lean in. So space, baby has space here, belly has space. And this feels super yummy. If the fingers don't want to stay here, let them rest over knees or thighs. If you have extra blocks, and you can place them off to the side here. You might interlace fingers underneath. And then we're going to stay several breaths. Remember that you might also find a way to face your props so that the head does not necessarily have to turn. If you have had your head turned towards one side, take a moment to turn to the opposite cheek if it feels comfortable for your neck. As always, the forehead can also be supported. Simply tuck the chin towards the chest. Invite a deeper breath in. Begin to lift your gaze. Let the light back in. And let's readjust our setup here to find the next supported shape. So same idea, we still want to set up our sort of anchoring blocks or pillows, and then we're going to reset the same setup but off the mat, off to the side. So you can see that my mat is in this position. My block setup and my pillow setup is just off of the mat, right? On the floor, essentially. I am going to have a blanket here as a little pillow, and I'm actually going to steal an extra pillow here because really the more pillows, the better, the better. All right, here's where things start to get interesting. This is a side lying position, and here's how we're going to use it. I'm going to come onto my left elbow. I'm going to leave this extra pillow here for a moment. I'm coming onto my the side of my head here, supported by my pillow, and guess what this little setup is doing? This is to stack your leg. This is to stack your leg in an internal rotation. So it's not just any simple stack. It's also a way to help shift the dimensions of the pelvis, because we don't have the pelvis sort of squared and kind of closed off anymore. With the leg in this position, we've shifted the pelvis. There's a slight tilt. There's now an internal rotation of your leg. The back of your pelvis probably feels a little bit more open, a little bit more spacious. So specifically the sits bones. In this position, your sits bones have widened. You've separated them a little bit. So you're giving the pelvis, and if baby's inside, you're giving baby a different experience of the space that they have. And this is just a great way to rest. This other pillow, I'm going to tuck it under my top arm to prevent myself from rolling forward or rounding my upper shoulder. And we simply rest. We breathe. We enjoy simply surrendering to this present moment, this time for yourself and for baby. Begin to deepen your breath. Wake up a little bit of your fingers and toes. Slowly shift the top leg away from your prop setup. And start to use your top arm to help gently press away. Back up into a seat. And let's practice this last shape on the other side. And so I'm just going to switch sides here by just flipping things around. You might have your own way of flipping around and making it a little easier for yourself. Obviously, do make note that if you are just using this as Shavasana, you don't have to do both sides. You're just going to choose either the left or the right, depending on what's feeling good that day. And you can use this as your side-lying Shavasana. You can use this setup anytime you want. In my classes, hopefully, others will give you the freedom to have your own Shavasana, the way that best supports you. So take your time, settle in. I'm missing my last pillow. So see, this practice is a little trial and error. Allow the attention to return back to breath, back to self, and back to baby. If at any time you feel that you have to adjust yourself, never feel like you have to force yourself to stay. Always make room, adjust, move, or change the shape completely. What's most important is that you and baby are comfortable. I made a slight adjustment myself, moving my setup a little further away from me so that my knee could slide down a little bit more. Which is just demonstrating an example of how things may want to shift even after you've set yourself up. Gently invite subtle movement through fingers and toes. The breath begins to deepen as we reawaken, shifting away from your tools, the props that supported you. And for the last time, we'll work our way into a final upright seat. We can just move what we need. You don't have to disassemble it all, but just get comfortable for one last seat. I have my bolster here, so I'm actually just going to sit on it. You can play with using your bolsters to sit on, adding a little bit more height, adding just a different sensation for the pelvis, or even just sitting on your pillows or a medicine ball. Very similar, right? So let's just take a moment to reflect. Come back to your breath now. Recognize this breath as your own. And what does that mean for you? This breath feeds you and it nourishes you. And we recognize that this breath also feeds baby. This breath also nourishes baby. And so can you recognize that you can nourish yourself and then nourish baby too? I invite you to place one hand over your heart or chest, the other hand over baby's home. Notice the dance of heart, of breath, and maybe even of baby. Recognize the power within your breath and between, or rather within, this exchange that you are creating. You're creating an exchange between yourself and your baby. This power is always within you, and it is accessible wherever you are. I invite you to bring your hands at heart center next. And if we can remember that great concept, the power of your breath, it is always with you. Let's seal that into our hearts, into our minds. And with 3 cleansing breaths, let's seal our practice together. A breath in through the nose. A cleansing breath out. Full breath in. And cleansing breath out. Final breath. As you exhale, bow to your space and practice. Thank you for sharing your space and your energy with me. Be well.